accept that. What you say? Anything. That's right. Hey, listen, I have to admit that this we must have had some impact on people's heads. This show, it had to have had. I was driving along the other day. Now listen, you got to get the scene. I'm driving along this New Jersey highway, a biggie, and I was coming from a show that I had done over there, and I'm driving along with two or three other people going along, and all of a sudden, we're in the middle of this place where there's all kinds of used car lots, and there's all kinds of places where they sell rubber donuts, 24-hour-a-day coffee joints, you know, that kind of thing, and all kinds of neon signs and stuff. And we see suddenly off to our right, there are two kids, and one guy's got a camera. He's got this cheapy Instamatic, see? And they're running around very happily, chortling. See, they're going to take this picture. And this girl who was with us says, hey, take a look at that. Look at that. It's great. These two guys were about to take a picture. One was posing. You know, he's standing there very, very dramatically, and he's pointing and all that stuff. And the other guy's taking a picture, see? He's posing in front of a concrete Mexican. and it's got this concrete dog. You see, that's a typical New Jersey art objet, and he's taking this picture. See, and just as we come up to them, the one guy finishes the picture, and then they change places. See, the other guy runs around, the other one takes the camera. See, and I see one guy's wearing an orange T-shirt upon which it says the simple phrase "Excelsior." What's the matter, Joe? Anything, Joe. Heaven's sakes, there you go. Do I have to say? Number 7, Joe, second from the left, and the green knob. Right? You know, it had to be. That was more than a coincidence. You don't often, jump out of your car and run over and have your picture taken in front of a concrete Mexican unless there's reason. So let's bring it up there, Joe, please. I just feel like doing... Thank you. Yeah, I tell you, it's just oh, listen, not everything ends in disaster. It all depends on what you call disaster. Well, no, there's a whole philosophy of life, that holds that there is no actual winning. Understand that? Well, what is that philosophy called? It has a name. What philosophy is the one that says that life, really, the pursuit of pleasure is the goal in life? and that anything that is pleasure is good. Anything that is not good. What is that philosophy of life, class? Anybody here raise his hand? All right. Okay, we'll let you think about that one. Now, here's another one. What philosophy in life holds that the deniance of actual pleasure is more exquisite than enjoying it? In other words, the idea of thinking of a steak and savoring the idea of a steak is far more pleasurable than actually sitting down to a steak. This, incidentally, is not a popular philosophy in America. However, what is the name of that philosophy? There is such a philosophy. Now, there's another philosophy which I'd like to ask you about, gang, if you don't mind. This is a philosophy which is primarily based on what could be called pure logic. It is a philosophy that says that the ultimate exquisite joy is rationality, and that everything should be approached with total rationality. And some people are more equipped for this, and those people, incidentally, are more equipped to rule than those who are not blessed with this clear-cut, clean, logical, and I might say superior mind. What is that form of philosophy? Raise your hand, gang. Well, now the reason I bring this up tonight is I have to say that all of us go through periods in our lives when we experiment with these various philosophies, whether we know it or not. We just simply... Now, if what you're doing goes against the grain of what is held in your society as a popular philosophy, you'll find yourself very uncomfortable. Now, I'd like to... I'm going to make a suggestion here tonight. And this is one of Shepard's DPs. Do you mind if I have a DP tonight? You don't mind? Okay. Oh, we haven't had a good DP recently. I am suggesting that America, right now, is undergoing a major shift from one form of philosophy, and this is the old Greek philosophers' formal philosophies. We are undergoing a shift from one form of philosophy to another. And if you're on the old side, in other words, if you're still living under the old philosophy, you cannot quite understand why this new thing is coming in. And a lot of people are being caught in it. Speaking of philosophies, I'm going to ask, talking about a trivia question, whatever happened to the greening of America? You remember all that flapdoodle here a few semesters back when everybody thought that this was a great new concept and that this new generation was going to come along and we're going to do this unbelievable transformation of the whole world? Whatever happened to that crowd? I mean, the ones who were going to do the transformation, they're all working over at the agency now, right? Huh? Okay. I mean, I just bring these questions out so that the class is stirred up a little bit there. However, have you noticed that almost everybody in America now is on one form or another of diet? Okay. What is another name for diet? No, well, let's put it this way. What is another name for self-denial? In short, we're discussing a philosophy here. What philosophy stresses self-denial? Well, you just wrote it down, David. It's the contemplation of a pleasure rather than the realization of one. All right? You don't know. Did you ever take a course in ethics? Oh, I see. You're a statistical major. There's no ethics in statistics. That's great. That's the damn truth. I'm telling you. Have you ever tried to talk ethics to an IBM machine? No way. No conceivable way. Have you ever tried to talk ethics to a lot of people you know? No way. But ethics is a system of life, and ethics does not necessarily mean go straight, young man. Ethics is a concept of the way life should be lived, and it now in 1957, we'll just take a year at random. There were far fewer people on diets than there are in 1975. Would you agree? Okay. Now, why is this so? You're going to say because they're concerned about their health. Don't you think they all knew about that in 57? Yes. Well, that self-denial has slowly become one of the curious new movements in America. By the way, speaking of that, I think somebody ought to take the ought to take the initiative and deal with these vast American things once in a while on a television special. We'd make a great special. Would be the diet syndrome in America. I don't think there's ever been a country ever in the history of mankind that I know of that has gone on a deliberate self-denial regime or regimen as we have in the last roughly 10 years. This fascinates me. It really does, because you see magazines. You pick up magazines. You can stand in front of a newsstand. You look at the magazine. Almost every major magazine has, in the past couple of months, had an article entitled "The New Fantastic Sensational Permanent True to Life a Totally Successful Diet." And have you noticed this? That they're promoting diets, and yet nobody is associating the diets, as far as I know yet. I imagine there are a few sociologists are, but nobody's associating the diets with anything other than simple health. Well, I say there's more to it than that, much more. No, fashion too. Why is the fashion then? See, you're going to say what? I'm going to ask you a very serious question. What follows? Which comes first, the horse or the cart, or the chicken or the egg? You're going to say fashion. Well, why is it, say, fashionable in 1975 to show evidences of starvation? Now, why is it fashionable? You're saying because it looks better? Well, why does it look better? These are very, very, let's say, under the surface questions. So, because you see, in other societies, it was quite the opposite. And in fact, in our society, just a few years back, if you look at old movies, for example, and you see people like Mae West, for example, of, say, a 1936 movie, Mae West would be considered unbelievably fat today for a leading sex symbol in 1975. Well, is it that those people of, say, 1936 that watched these movies, were they dumb? No. As a matter of fact, there was much better literature being written in 1936 than there is now. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, a few guys were writing. Are you going to compare those guys to Philip Roth and Gay Talese? Come on. But no, the facts of the matter are, though, that so it isn't a matter of being less enlightened. It is a matter of a different view. Why was the view different? Fascinating. And just prior to that, let's say back around the time of World War I, if you see pictures in old photographs of leading stage ladies of the time, boy, those were really well-padded ladies. I mean, really. And they were considered extremely beautiful at the time. Well, because I suspect the philosophy, better known as hedonism, the philosophy of hedonism was truly full-blown at that period, and you can see it even in the excesses which are reported by Fitzgerald, for example, in the 20s. In other words, hedonistic existence was like the ultimate goal of the 20s, and so hedonism involves eating, drinking, doing it all, see, and letting it all hang out. So if you showed evidences of this hedonism, like being, a large lady like Mae West, it was obvious that Mae West did not step away from the big stakes, you see. So that was a national philosophy at the time, and it led to cars, for example, automobiles of unbelievable voluptuousness. If you've ever seen, say, restored Duesenbergs of the 20s, oh, those things, they rich leathers, magnificent chrome and great brass radiators. I mean, they really did it. In other words, everything was to excess, tremendous, and that was almost Romanesque. Now, as we went through a lot of various changes, now I'm talking about historically, see, we've made it from that time, roughly from about the time of World War II on, we've made a slow, painful change from hedonism to the opposite philosophy. And what is the opposite philosophy? Even to this day, there are some that are still clinging to hedonism. You know, the people that still think in terms of great big cars, that still think in terms of a 400-room home. Nobody builds that kind of stuff anymore. But there are some that still believe in it, you see, and they're still clinging to the old philosophy, but they're out of another age. So you find today that people are within our philosophical context of now. Let's just take a typical hip film star of now today is considered very hip because she weighs 98 pounds or he weighs 105 pounds, and he has a 12-inch waist, and he lives in a lean-to in the Rockies. Right? Okay, so this is self-denial, right? This is it's a different kind of philosophy. Now we say, well, that's better. See, that's better. Well, at any given time, you always think the philosophy that is popular at the time is better, and that's why that philosophy is followed. You know what follows. So the question is, what is the philosophy that we are now slowly moving into? You can even see it in our cars. You notice the cars are shrinking like crazy. They're getting to be Spartan. Clean. No longer do you see great chrome headlights all over them and stuff. And so you see the Spartan machines, like the Pacer, for example, is all clean glass, very little chrome protuberances anywhere on it. The interior is very Spartan. Now, what is that philosophy that we're moving towards? Come on, Dave. Okay, if one was hedonism, what's the other? What's the opposite of hedonism? Well, there are several selections that you can choose from. You can choose from Epicureanism, which incidentally, there are some elements of it in this, because the Epicurean, you see, is a philosophy that does not go for the plenty, it goes for the exquisite. In short, instead of going down and standing around and eating 17 hamburgers, you have one exquisite, very small sandwich, but exquisite. You understand what I'm saying? Instead of drinking 17 six-packs of beer, you buy one very elegant French 15-year-old wine. Now, you're not self-denying, but you're being highly selective. This is an Epicurean concept. One is a gourmand, the other is a gourmet. They seem similar, but they're not. They're worlds apart. Now, have you heard of the philosophy that goes basically under the title of the Stoic? Has nothing to do with bringing babies. All right. Now, class, could it be that we're moving to a combination of Stoicism and Epicureanism, where they exist side by side? Curiously enough, they can. You know. Where the Stoic, of course, is a person who really truly is a self-denier. Now, if you can have a part of you that's self-denial, the other part is a small dash of Epicureanism, in which when you do indulge, you indulge at very expensive things. In short, you see this all around. You know, you hear everybody talking about there's a terrific recession and all this stuff. And yet, do you know that places where they sell, say, $18,000 automobiles, they're booming? Okay? So you see, there's Epicureanism existing with extreme Stoicism. So you'll see you'll see a model, for example, or just a woman who will not eat for months on end so that she can weigh 82 pounds. Self-denial. One of the basic urges that man has is to eat. Whether it's fashionable or not, you do have an urge to eat. This is a basic drive of the organism. So when you deny this, you're saying something about the philosophy of the time, even though you might say, well, I look better that way. Well, why do you look better? We have to go back to that. Beauty is in the eye, you see. Oh, no. You know that there are many societies who say a large stomach is beautiful? You don't believe there are societies that say this? Well, all right. I'm merely saying that this. So when you say they're wrong, well, they're not necessarily wrong. Beauty is not wrong or right. Beauty is it's filtered through many, many different things inside of you. So the mere fact that right now, in 1975, we believe that being thin is beautiful. But there's no guarantee, and this, in fact, I can guarantee that the opposite is true, that there is no guarantee that by, say, the year 2000, that will still be the essence of beauty. As a matter of fact, here we're moving here now again into, see, I think the 60s were the last gasp of hedonism. In other words, let it all hang out. The 60s happened, people did everything. The guys were smoking pot and the whole bit, see, and that's now quickly going. Have you noticed that the hair has become very much shorter? Now, that would have surprised a lot of guys in 1965 to realize that by 1975, the short hair would be coming back. Yes, they wouldn't have believed it. I said, no, we finally arrived at the millennia of beauty. We finally arrived at the true concept of beauty, long hair. And long hair is now rapidly disappearing. I'm going to suggest to you that by the year 2000, the very thin body will have disappeared. That's hard to believe, see, because when you're in the middle of something, you always say, oh, come on, it's ridiculous. How can that be? Oh, don't kid yourself. Some doctor will come out, you watch, and we will find rationale for it, you see. We're finding rationale now for our thinness, our insane desire to lose weight. We're finding a rationale for it in medical terms. Well, what's to prevent medicine all of a sudden to say, yes, we have just discovered that people who are underweight develop JPIP 17 times faster than those who are not. And as we know, pernicious JPIP is killing more people. The next thing you know, whoa, the guys are going to be stuffing Twinkies in them, and within a short time, the whole thing changes again. Fashion is again part of a philosophy. It always is. So the question is, which direction are we going in this country? If you were, let's say, a Greek philosopher. Let's put it this way. All societies are always going in two directions, Joe. That's a fact. No, that's always true. That's a good point, because it's true. There's always, for every action within a society, as well as within a physical equation, for every action there is inevitably a reaction. Inevitably. They're beginning to realize this now. It used to be that the Newtonian laws of physics were almost always applied only to true physical objects. Now, a lot of people are looking at the Newtonian laws, applying it to the behavioral patterns of men and animals. In short, one of the basic Newtonian concepts was that for every action there is a reaction, which means that if you push a car and it gets rolling, it took a certain amount of inertia to get that car starting. It's going to take almost the same. It will take the same amount of power to stop it. So even though you're not aware of the fact that gravity and all this is exerting this power on the car, it is exerting exactly the same amount of power to stop the car as you exerted to start it. And so when it arrives at a static point where it's stopped, period, it is not moving. Is this boring? Yeah, it is. But yeah, and of course, you see, with every reaction, you do find the reaction, and for every action, there is a reaction. So on the one hand, you'll find that large segments of the population are not indulging themselves in one thing or another. They're you can call it a diet, but a Greek philosopher, if he were to arrive on the scene and just look at us through a prismatic glass, he would say, "Oh, I see. By the Jovian clouds of the Circean oracles." How do you like that? What boots this cruise that I carry? Well, by the Jovian statements of the oracles of Circe, if not Plainfield, we've come to a fine state of affairs in this roistering nation. Great amounts of Stoics have suddenly developed. But that means that you're pushing away from the table, you see. You find people are not drinking as much, strangely enough. No, they are. That's dropping off in many sections of the country. And yes, it may surprise you, Joe. It hasn't happened yet in your bar, but Uh, Nevertheless, this is what's been occurring. Now, on the other hand, you find this a reaction setting in. The people who do drink are drinking more. Thank you, thank you. And this is what drove those poor Greek philosophers right up the tree. But but the facts are that as we go bumbling along, you see, we can't escape from being part and parcel of what could be called a you might say an unspoken way of life of the time that you live in. There's no way for you to escape being a 20th century man. See, what we do in our country, we do some several things I think are very not only fallacious, but they're very artificial. We tend to not think of ourselves in large spans of time. We tend to think of ourselves in very brief cultural slash generational time elements in America. In other words, if a guy graduated from Princeton in 1975, of course he's totally different from a guy that graduated from Princeton in 1968. Why? Well, 6 years difference. Everybody knows that makes a classic difference. Well, this will be laughed at by future historians and social analysts because it's one of the myths of our time. We confuse, of course, fads, too. We also confuse fads with movements. Big difference. So a fad will suddenly strike a country, our country, a cultural fad. There will be, say, for example, you remember a few years ago when we went through the let's everybody jump out of the car and clean up the Long Island Expressway fad. And there was a belief that within a short time, America would be totally cleaned up. Everybody's going to pick up all the beer cans and all the stuff, and it's going to be spick and span, you know, like this nice little park. Well, you all know what happened to that fad. Yeah, it went quickly out the window, and now as you drive along your average road, you see guys throwing out, they're throwing bags of paper cups and the whole jazz, even more than before. So that's a cultural fad. It's not a trend, and it is not a movement. In short, I think the greening of America was a cultural fad and not a genuine movement. It was a fad of the period to believe that anybody under 20 was going to rescue the entire country. This is a fad rather than a genuine movement. And of course, it's easy enough to confuse a movement with a fad or vice versa. See, movements are rarely discerned, is what I'm saying. Fads are very obvious. So a true movement takes, incidentally, far more than a generation. A movement in any given society takes upwards of 100 years or more. Even in a society that has great communications, it doesn't matter. So it'll take 100 years or more to stand back. If you were to see America, here it is, 1975. Next year it'll be 200 years this country has been in action. And so I would say that the 100 years, I think it's been briefly 100 years. You know, they have noticed, curiously enough. Have you heard ever the theory, what they call the Deca theory of history? Deca, meaning 10, units of 10. You know, of course, the decimal system, which is based on units of 10. Why 10? Well, you're a statistician, David. You have a degree in the field. Why 10? Why not 8, say, for example? Because we have 10 fingers. Well, that's one of the theories. You know, they're reconsidering that now. You know what one of the theories they've come up with is that subconsciously we have realized that 10 is a curiously organic natural figure. Now, nobody knows quite why it is, but we've noticed that, for example, that a decade, which is 10 years, a decade curiously is self-contained. In short, the 20s have a certain self-containment. Immediately after the 20s stopped and the 30s began, a whole different thing developed. And it stayed right in that decade. Now, they also have extended that to the 100-year theory, which means that, let's say, from the year roughly 1875 to our time, we'll say for argument's sake, from 1900 to 1975, 75 years, right? That we're now beginning to approach the end of an entire unit of living style and attitude, and by the year 2000 it will be over, but we're all in it. No matter what generation you think you are within the 20th century, you're as much in it as anybody else. In short, you could have been born, let's say, for argument's sake, we'll just pull it out of the hat. You could have been born in 1920, you could have been born in 1930, you could have been born in 1940 or 1950 or even 1960, but you're all part of the general milieu of the 20th century. And your closeness is far more outweighed. Your closeness outweighs by far the minute differences between the few years. Now, that's not a popular view in America at this time, because in America, a popular view is every 5 years, a whole new way of life comes along. The people are totally different. They think differently, because we're confusing a way of life with, say, such things as pop music. Have you noticed? For example, and this is interesting too when you get down to right down to the basic nittiness of pop music. Have you noticed that these pop music things, which are part of our life too, have extremely long cyclic patterns? How old is rock? Do you think rock came along with the Stones? Are you kidding? How old is rock? About almost a quarter of a century. And rock, by the way, is directly associated with and came right out of music which was just prior to rock. Sure, it didn't spring full-blown. In short, these things, that the music of the 20th century really began right about the time of the turn of the century, and began with what could be called the very first origins of jazz. You see. So here we are now, and as have you noticed, it's decaying now rapidly, that the music is beginning to decay, and by probably the 1990 period, the decay will have set in very strongly. You notice much music today has ceased to be even that, and has become show. In other words, the David Bowie syndrome, where it's all great flashing lights and people stabbing each other and blowing up balloons and everything else. So the music itself has become decadent. It's beginning to decay. It's like the Byzantine period of architecture, where the rooms practically didn't exist, but there was a hell of a lot of decoration all over the place. So anyway, what philosophy do you think is behind, let's say, the dieting? Let's raise that up again there. Now, before we go any further, how much time do we have, David? Quick. 2 minutes. Oh, you can't deal with that's the end of the ball game. You can't deal with 400 centuries of. What's the what? Do you ever think of these things? You're walking down the street. I don't think many people do, I'm afraid. And yet they're part of it. They may not think of it consciously. Subconsciously, they're certainly aware of it. So people will argue. You'll hear one guy say, well, after a while, you're here today, gone tomorrow. The hell with it all. I'm going to have 7 McDonald's. I'm going to have, give me 5 cheeseburgers, 2 quarter pounders, and 7 Big Macs. All right, he's arguing against it. See, he's fighting it. There are other guys that say, I don't care what they say. I want myself the longest, biggest, fattest Cadillac you can get. I'll burn all again. So it's a reaction to what obviously is beginning to slowly happen all around us. And it's fascinating to watch these slow evolving shifts from one way of life. There was a period when we were deep into what could be called the Christianity. This was one of the 6 great philosophies. That was back, by the way, that was back around the time of Michelangelo. That was back right in the middle of the 15th, 16th, and early 17th centuries. That was the period of Christianity. We've slipped into different periods then from that time on. And right now we're slowly eluding or gliding from what could be called the high water mark of hedonism into another form of philosophy, which could be called really Epicureanism / Stoicism. Existing side by side. One will win out, though. One will win out by the year 2000. Which are you betting on? The odds are up there on the tote board. Epicureanism or Stoicism?
By recording from New York, you've been listening to Inside Gene Shepherd. Our next Shepherd program can be heard 6:30 Thursday evening.